is adjourned and the bill is referred to the House Committee. This council continued with the second reading debate on the Appropriation Bill 2022. Members already spoke at the last meeting. I will now first call upon the relevant secretaries to speak first, and then I will call upon the Financial Secretary to reply. Secretary for Innovation Technology.
President, I'd like to thank members for speaking at the second reading debate last Tuesday. They have spoken and provided valuable opinions on INT development and the INT initiatives in the budget. Continuous promotion of INT development is an important strategy to foster a vibrant and diversified economy. In the past 4 years, including this year, the current term government has invested over $150 billion in R&D development along major 8 areas. We continue to improve Hong Kong's R&D ecosystem. The results have been seen. For example, the number of startups surged from around 1,000 in 2014 to around 4,000 last year. And the amount of venture capital investment surged from $1.24 billion to about $41.7 billion in the same period. We are also seeing the birth of over 10 unicorns. Various indicators reflected that our INT ecosystem is getting more vibrant. This year's budget continues to new vigor into INT, inject more resources, including promoting R&D, supported IT startups, promoting digital economy, to consolidate and enhance many measures to promote INT development to further support the INT development. Next, I would like to speak on issues of concern. R&D underpins INT development. I'd like to thank members for supporting the government's R&D efforts. And in life sciences and health sciences, Hong Kong has strong research capabilities. Under one country systems, we have a highly internationalized market. We have unique advantages. We have the capability to respond to the call by the nation's 14th five-year plan to focus on human health sector. We should give full play to Hong Kong's advantages and meet the country's needs. The budget this year announced that we are going to set aside $10 billion to provide more comprehensive support to the long-term development on health and sciences to enhance our capability and capacity, including setting up the InnoLife Health Tech Hub in the INT Park in Hong Kong, Shenzhen Park, and we will also double the amount of subsidy to 16 state key labs and 6 Hong Kong branches of Chinese National Engineering Research Centers so that they can have more resources to do R&D, attract and nurture more local and overseas INT talents, and to promote their exchanges with their counterparts on the mainland. Now, startups are an important segment of INT in Hong Kong, and they also provide development opportunities and quality jobs to Hong Kong people, young people, and we should support startups. Since 2014, the government has launched the Technology Startup Support Scheme for universities under the INT Fund. We subsidized 6 local universities and their teams to commercialize their R&D output. I thank members for speaking in support of doubling the subsidy amount to the universities and to enhance our efforts to support universities to commercialize their output. On the other hand, the government has been working through different investment funds to provide support to startups at various stages. For example, to the corporate venture funds of the HKSTP and also the cyber port macro funds. We are supporting startups on a matching basis and co-invest with angel investors and venture funds. And also the INT Venture Fund under the INT Fund is also investing jointly in local startups. These funds will help or encourage local companies to do more investment on startups to provide and to create a more vibrant INT ecosystem. And this year, we are also setting up a $5 billion strategic technology fund under the Hong Kong growth portfolio to invest in Hong Kong technology enterprises with strategic value, considerable size, and development potential to enrich Hong Kong's INT system. We have asked HKSTB and Singapore to identify investment opportunities, and at the right time, we'll make the announcement. Many members are also concerned about that. Given the very complicated and changing international environment, how can we attract technology talents to enhance our competitive edge? Undoubtedly, talent is a big driving force of promoting INT development. I agree that we should strengthen our talent pool. We should nurture and gather more high-caliber INT talents. Indeed, the government has done a lot of work in this area through various measures and investment plans. We have tried to cultivate the young generation's interest in INT at various stages and encourage and help university students to join the INT sector. And we support local and high overseas INT sectors to develop in Hong Kong. A Hong Kong research cluster at HKSTP has successfully attracted 33 top-notch universities and R&D bodies from 11 economic entities to set up 28 R&D labs. And we have gathered over 1,000 top-notch R&D personnel in Hong Kong to engage in cross-sector and cross-disciplinary R&D work. Now, the Global STEM Professorship Scheme was launched in June last year. 60 renowned scholars have been selected, and over 10 have arrived in Hong Kong to do R&D work. The remaining will be arriving gradually. And in the second reading debate, several members have mentioned about promoting reindustrialization. In the past few years, the government has been trying to create favorable conditions to promote reindustrialization in terms of infrastructure, talent, capital, technology, and R&D. Now, in terms of infrastructure building, the HKSTB Advanced Manufacturing Center is about to be commissioned. Another center, microelectronics center, is being built and is slated for operation in 2024. It will provide support for smart production and high-end manufacturing. The sector has been very positive towards these two facilities. So the HKSTB is now starting to consider building the second advanced manufacturing center to further support reindustrialization efforts. I also thank members for supporting the government setting up the Digital Economy Development Committee to expedite the development of digital economy in Hong Kong and promote digital transformation of various industries. In the past few years, the government has been launching a number of digital economic promotion measures. In terms of open data, we are working through the data.gov.hk to provide more free open data from the government for use by the public and the sector. We have also completed setting up the different digital infrastructures, including the new generation cloud platform, the big data analytics platform, and the IM Smart one-stop personalized identity service platform. To encourage government departments to adopt technology, we are setting aside $6 billion to conduct a comprehensive e-government audit in the next 3 years to review the progress of adoption of technology by government departments and to enhance service efficiency through the adoption of new tech options. Now, we are forging ahead, building on our past, and we're trying to strengthen the existing INT promotion measures so that we can scale new heights. We will continue to work with the tech sector to promote the implementation of various INT measures so that we can build Hong Kong into an international INT center. We have every confidence that with the support of the government, our own unique advantages, the cooperation and commitment of government, industry, academic, and research sectors, Hong Kong has a promising future in terms of our INT development, and we will build a brighter future for Hong Kong. I so submit, and I look forward to members for supporting the Appropriation Bill 2022.
Secretary for Financial Services in the Treasury. President, first of all, I would like to thank members for their invaluable views on issues relating to financial services and the Treasury during the debate on the Appropriation Bill 2022. I would like to respond on several fronts in relation to Hong Kong as an international financial center, integration, international development, financial security, green finance, and fintech. As a leading global financial center, Hong Kong has unique advantages, such as institutional advantages under one country, two systems, a fine tradition of rule of law, a market-oriented and internationalized business environment, robust infrastructure support, internationally aligned regulatory regimes, a full range of financial products, and the free flow of information and capital, etc. The 14th Five-Year Plan expressly supports Hong Kong in enhancing our status as an international financial center, strengthening our functions as a global offshore renminbi RMB business hub, an international asset management center and a risk management center, as well as deepening and widening mutual access between the financial markets of Hong Kong and the mainland so as to develop a high-quality Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, GBA. To this end, we will continue to make good use of national policies and our own advantages and play well our bridging and platform role at the intersection of domestic and international circulations. In terms of type of investment products, risk management tool, appropriate corporate financing arrangement, treasury management needs, etc., we will connect domestic and foreign markets and investors and assist Hong mainland enterprises explore the international market as we proactively develop a more vibrant and diversified financial market. While making rapid development, we will strike the right balance to maintain stability and security. Serving the needs of the country is a core mission for the development of Hong Kong as an international financial center. We will work towards the goals of the 14th Five-Year Plan and promote mutual access with the mainland financial markets, as well as take GBA as an entry point to strengthen financial cooperation with the mainland. We have started preparations to allow stocks traded by the southbound trading of Stock Connect to be denominated in RMB. We are taking forward the initiative together with the relevant mainland authorities and the sector. In light of actual operational experience and market feedback, we are exploring other measures to enhance wealth management connect, such as the gradual expansion of the account opening attestation service, allowing more participating financial institutions, FIs, and improving sales arrangements, etc. On another front, due to the increased risks and uncertainties of listing and overseas markets, we will allow Greater China companies without weighted vote rights structure and which are not from the innovative sectors to seek secondary listing in Hong Kong and offer more flexibility to issuers seeking dual primary listings. These measures will further help attract quality China's concept stock companies to list in Hong Kong and provide more choices for market players. The Securities and Futures Commission and the Hong Kong X are reviewing the main board listing rules and having due regard to the risks involved, examining the revision of the listing requirements to meet the fundraising needs of large-scale advanced technology enterprises. To participate more proactively in the development of GBA, it was announced in the budget that funding to the Hong Kong growth portfolio will be increased by $5 billion to set up a GBA investment fund and focus on projects in the GBA that can benefit Hong Kong. We will formulate suitable investment approach in accordance with the investment guidelines specified by the Governance Committee, as well as specific policy objectives and investment directions of the GBA investment fund. We note the views of many members on the fund. We will review the investment performance of the Hong Kong growth portfolio from time to time and make timely enhancement to the portfolio. The COVID-19 pandemic, heightened geopolitical tensions, and other uncertainties have led to much volatility in the global financial markets. Thanks to our robust and effective regulatory regime and a well-established institutional framework for systemic risk monitoring, Hong Kong's financial markets have been functioning well. We have an adequate foreign exchange reserve exceeding $480 billion, which is equivalent to 1.8 times of our monetary base, and it underpins the smooth operation of the linked exchange rate system. The Hong Kong dollar market has been functioning in an orderly manner with no abnormal signs of capital flow observed. The banking system has also remained stable, with the capital adequacy ratio as a buffer indicator staying high at 20%, far exceeding the international minimum standard of 8%. Trading, clearing, and settlement activities are all proceeding in an orderly manner at the Hong Kong X. We will, as always, take it upon ourselves to safeguard national financial security and continue to coordinate the work of the various financial regulators so as to maintain the financial security of Hong Kong. Specifically, we will maintain the smooth operation of the financial market and relevant systems and continue to enhance our capabilities in withstanding external shocks. We will strengthen monitoring and cross-agency collaboration for early identification and response to systemic risks. We will conduct stress tests on targeted trades to enhance their response capabilities. We will strengthen systemic security and maintenance of critical financial infrastructure. We will formulate and update contingency plans in response to different crisis scenarios and strengthen communication and exchanges with the relevant mainland authorities. In early April, the mainland solicited public opinions on the draft National Financial Stability Law. The draft law establishes a resolution regime targeting financial institutions. We are also paying close attention to it too. In Hong Kong, we and the various financial regulators have implemented various measures on risk prevention and resolution to control systemic risk in the market and to support the sustainable operation of financial institutions as far as necessary. For instance, Hong Kong has enacted the Financial Institutions Resolution Ordinance and put in place related regulations to respond to risks imposed on the financial system when certain FIs are unable to sustain the operation, that is, the so-called too-big-to-fail financial institutions. The resolution regime covers the banking, securities, and insurance sectors. When an institution is no longer able to sustain its operation, the regulatory authority may deal with its closure in an orderly manner and maintain the stable and effective operation of the financial system in Hong Kong. In view of the risk of virtual asset activities and the importance of protecting the interests of investors, we will introduce in mid-2022 a licensing regime for virtual asset service providers under the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Ordinance. We will actively review the regulation of crowdfunding activities to put in place a more clearly defined regulatory framework. The aim is to enhance the transparency and accountability of crowdfunding activities with a view to preventing unlawful acts and safeguarding the interests of the public. We will work with the Security Bureau and relevant departments on the details of the proposal. We will consult the public this year. On green and sustainable finance, we have been working with financial regulators and the trade to promote its development through a multi-pronged strategy. We launched a new green and sustainable finance grant scheme last May to provide subsidy for eligible bond issuers and loan borrowers to cover their expenses on bond issuance and external review services. We will lower the minimum loan size from $200 million to $100 million in respect of applications for subsidies for covering external review costs under the scheme to benefit more enterprises seeking green transformation. We also plan to launch the pilot green and sustainable finance capacity building support scheme to provide subsidies to practitioners in the financial and related sectors for the training and acquisition of relevant professional qualifications with a view to building a talent pool in green and sustainable finance. Under the Government Green Bond Program, GGBP, a total of over $7 billion equivalent of green bonds has been successfully issued since May 2019. These bonds were well received by investors. We have just launched the first batch of retail green bond for subscription till the 6th of May. We have also doubled the borrowing ceiling of the GGBP to 200 billion Hong Kong dollars, and we will continue to issue green bonds having regard to the market situation. Many members pointed out that our economy must move in the high technology and value-added direction. Where financial services are concerned, we have proposed a series of initiatives in this year's budget to encourage the sector to seize upon the new opportunities in fintech. On fintech infrastructure building, our launch of the commercial data interchange will enable more effective use of sources of commercial data, including data of government departments. Financial institutions will be able to evaluate credit information more efficiently, and that will facilitate SME financing. We will launch a new round of FinTech Proof of Concept Subsidy Scheme to encourage financial institutions to partner with FinTech companies to conduct proof of concept projects on innovative financial services and products. We have developed a one-stop platform to allow eligible financial institutions and technology firms to conduct pilot trials of cross-boundary fintech projects concurrently in Hong Kong and the mainland, with a view to speeding up the launch of products and reducing costs. On talent development, which is of interest to some members, we will be stepping our effort in this respect. We are pleased with the overwhelming response from the sector to the new round of the Financial Practitioners FinTech Training Program. More than 7,100 practitioners have signed up, and we hope more trade groups will make good use of our training program to boost the competitiveness of practitioners. We will promote the development of professional qualifications recognized for fintech practitioners this year and launch a subsidy scheme to encourage practitioners to take up training and promote the professional development of fintech talents. I so submit, and I hope members will support the Appropriation Bill.
經濟發展局局
Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. President, I would like to respond to the members' comments regarding the CETB. I know that members are concerned about the support of the SME in mainland, as well as expanding investment promotion and turn Hong Kong into a IP trading hub, as well as supporting tourism development. First, I would like to thank all for your valuable comments. For the aspects I mentioned has been the focus of our work in the past, and looking into the future, we will put in more effort to enhance the existing measures in order to maintain or even enhance our competitiveness. And supporting the SMEs, in view of the sustaining epidemic, that the SME guarantee finance scheme is for the 80, 90%, or 100% product, the application deadline has been extending to May 2023, as well as enhancing the 100% guaranteed scheme by raising the loan ceiling to the 27 months of payroll and rent, with the upper limit raised to $9 billion, with maximum repayment period extended to 10 years. For the payment holiday, now extended to 30, principal payment holiday extended to 30 months. The government has increased the loan to $110 billion to benefit 40,000 SMEs. Since the launch of the enhancement measures on April 2021, we have approved over $500 million in loans. And for the HKECIC, last December launched the CreditNet 2.0 to provide a faster and quicker service. And this March, on a trial basis, it launched the Export Credit Guarantee Program. In view of the ECIC commitment to the loans, the banks will be more confident on SME lending, while the exporter can easier obtain trade finance credits. The HKECIC at the second half of this year will have this flexible compensation ratios that for clients can automatically raise the credit limit of $5 million or below, while the payout amount will be adjusted accordingly. Some propose the HKECIC should put in more effort to help the SMEs crack into the mainland market. The HKECIC is actively exploring a deepening liaison with the counterparts in the mainland for more cooperation to support Hong Kong companies to crack into the domestic sales market. In fact, we've been working with various initiatives to crack into the mainland market. Hope that you can seize the dual circulation strategy as well as the GBA development. For example, in next 3 years and each year, we'll inject extra $45 million each year, and all total $135 million for the TDC support scheme for pursuing development in the mainland. It will cover cities with a major presence, for example, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and those markets with potential, for example, Beijing, Chongqing, Hangzhou, and Shanghai. And the TDC and the mainland networks will work with the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce to organize online and offline training, exchange trade missions, and trade promotion visits. By participating, the Hong Kong companies will familiarize themselves with the mainland operating environment and markets to help them expand business and expand the network to various cities and provinces. Some members are quite concerned about the RCEP. The RCEP states that upon 18 months of enactment, according to the Joint Secretariat rules, to be open to other memberships, countries, and regions. We'll seize the first opportunity in this January, file the application to join the RCEP. We'll continue to work through various channels to initiate advanced discussion with the member state for early admission into the RCEP. On investment promotion, with the pandemic getting stabilized, we'll seize the timing by our country network to step up our investment promotion to rebuild investor confidence at home and abroad to maintain our competitiveness. Invest Hong Kong recurrent funding will be increased in phases by 90 million to attract IT business to Hong Kong, as well to advertise the opportunities brought by carbon and zero, as well as to strengthen the work on GBA and Belt and Road initiatives. Invest Hong Kong will strengthen its Beijing, Shanghai, and Chengdu and Wuhan investment promotion unit and step up Promotion Hong Kong as the springboard for mainland companies. At the same time, Invest Hong Kong will strengthen our overseas network, for example, in our Berlin, Brussels, Toronto, and Jakarta ETO investment promotion unit in Africa and Mid-Asia to appoint consultants to start a promotion of Hong Kong and expound on the Hong Kong narrative, as well to help the companies to seize their Belt and Road initiatives opportunities. The SF government will work with the TDCs and others will try to visit to promote Hong Kong in the mainland or in overseas. Promoting Hong Kong as an IP trading hub, the 14th Five-Year Plan supports Hong Kong to be developing into such a hub. And ensuring a Hong Kong IP regime to move it with the times and align with international standards is one of the key part of our strategy. And this aspect will complete the consultation of upgrading our copyright regime. And last week, we have briefed the CIP channel on the consultation outcome and the future directions. And the panel support that the Copyright Amendment Bill to be tabled to LegCo as soon as possible. And next month, we will submit the bill for first and second reading to LegCo. By then, I will count on the member support to expedite the scrutiny of this bill. On supporting the tourism industry, in the past 2 years or so, the tourism has been the most battered. To help the industry cope with the difficulties, since 2020, the government has provided 7 rounds of altogether 3.8 billion of support in cumulative terms. When the pandemic has stabilized and while the caseload dropping, some tourism facilities, for example, Hong Kong Disneyland and the Ocean Park, their local tours have restarted on April 21st. The chief executive yesterday announced that the water world of the Ocean Park can be opened on May 5th, and the second stage of relaxations will be advanced to 19th of May and allowed to resumption of cruise to nowhere itineraries. And the water will be opened on the 15th of May for cruise to nowhere. And for the gradually relaxing social distancing measures, we are updating the quarantine requirements. We'll notice cruise operators to allow them to make early preparations. The Hong Kong Tourism Board are not allowed to spend to redeem and spend to vacation special programs, so that before the resumption of cross-boundary travel, we can provide business opportunities for the sector involved. And on top of the recurrent resources, in this year's budget, further reserved $1.2 billion to the tourism sector to implement the slogan of shaping tourism with cultural activities and promoting culture through tourism, as well to reinforce Hong Kong's status as the cultural hub between the East and West. For example, 600 million to set up a 3-year program of cultural and heritage sites local tourist incentive scheme, and 60 million for the training of tourism personnel for 3 years, and 600 million to support the Hong Kong Tourism Board to reinvigorate tourism board and first for cultural tourism. The HKTB will make use of its $100 billion in reserve to complement the initiatives. All these formation measured and the support not only provide business opportunities and employment for the industry and the practitioners, and also upgrade the attractions and tour guides standards, and to get ready for the return of the tourists. President, I so submit. I urge members to support the Appropriation Bill 2022.
局長。
Secretary for Labour and Welfare. Mr. President, I'd like to respond to the points raised by members during the resumption of second reading of the bill in relation to labour and welfare. Last week, members spoke on elderly services, especially residential care home services for the elderly, under my portfolio. And in particular, I've noticed that members have expressed concerns about the quantity and quality of elderly care. I hope that in the future, whenever the government puts forward proposal about improving elderly care, especially funding for such facilities, will have the support of members. In 2022-23, the provision for elderly services under the Social Welfare Department will increase by 7.4% comparing to the revised estimates in 2021-22. This may not represent a significant increase, but it has gone up by 87.1% comparing to the actual expenditure in 2017-18, and this is a significant increase comparing to 53.1% rise in the last term of government or 48.2% the term before. Members may not be entirely satisfied with the efforts made by this term of government, and indeed, I would hope to do more if I could and try harder to catch up. But there are some factors beyond the control of this government. In the coming year, the construction of 9 subvented residential care homes for the elderly, or RCHs, will be completed, 7 of which are in Kutong North from the same development projects. 2 others are in Tai Po and Queen's Hill. These 3 projects were proposed and planned by the last term of government and built by this government over the past 5 years. The planning and construction of subvented homes built and commissioned within this term of government actually started in the previous term of government or even earlier. One of the homes took as long as 17 years from planning to completion. And in other words, this government does not have a time machine to travel back in time to kick-start more RCHE projects so as to increase its supply in this term. Currently, we have begun the construction of about 60 contract homes, but they won't be completed until the next term of government or even subsequent terms of government. And nevertheless, in light of the above, for the current term of government, we have altogether added 5,000 EA1 RCHE places with 1,200 places for the coming year. As a result, the number of subvented places has increased by 19.3% within this term, vis-à-vis 7.1% in the previous term of government. In addition, the Financial Secretary has announced that in the coming year, in the scheme on residential care service voucher for the elderly, and in short, RCSV, will be regularized. And starting from this year, RCSV vouchers will be increased by 1,800 to 4,000 in total, in comparison with only 353 vouchers in 2017-18. This represents a significant increase. In counting these vouchers, the commitment of this term of government in residential care service for the elderly has risen by 32.1%. And more importantly, it's been announced in the 2020 policy address that on the premise of not affecting public housing production, about 5% of the total gross floor area in future public housing developments will be reserved exclusively for welfare uses. And that is to say, for example, if we have a site for 25,000 public housing units, 5% of the total gross floor area would allow us to build 2,500 to 3,000 RCG places. So the question is not where these homes should be built. As long as we're able to identify a site large enough for the production of 25,000 public housing units, naturally there will be sufficient space for 2,000 RCG places and other welfare facilities. And apart from raising the number of RCG places, we also attach importance to improving the quality of private homes. One of the ways to achieve this is to increase the number of bought EA places to 5,000 as mentioned above. When the Labour and Welfare Bureau first proposed 5,000 board places, we estimated that according to the prevailing policy, there was only capacity to increase the number by 1,000 to 2,000. Therefore, we proposed to add 1,000 places each year for 5 years so as to allow sufficient time for private homes not yet meeting EA1 standards to enhance the service quality. We plan to add 1,200 more board places in the coming year to meet the target. The second initiative is to make provision in this budget to assist EA2 homes to meet EA1 standards, involving about 2,200 places. This is the fourth and should be the last time provisions are made to help EA2 homes raise their standards to EA1. The third initiative is that we plan to introduce an amendment bill into LegCo at the end of this month to enhance the quality of RCGs by enhancing the minimum staffing requirements and increasing the minimum floor space per resident. Many EA2 homes at present will not be able to meet the statutory requirements upon legislative amendments. And in other words, EA2 homes will be phased out when the new requirements in the legislative amendments take effect. Apart from elderly care, many members are concerned about nurturing talents in Hong Kong. The Financial Secretary has announced that to keep on promoting continuing education and encouraging members of the public to pursue self-enhancement, the government will raise the subsidy ceiling of the Continuing Education Fund, or CEF, from $20,000 to $25,000 per applicant and remove the upper age limit. This is the second enhancement of the CEF in this term of government after the 2018-19 budget. Mr. President, members have also spoken on policies relating to unemployment support, reducing the wealth gap, labour importation, as well as the anti-epidemic fund and the employment support scheme. And I will further exchange views with members on other occasions. Also, some members referred to the expenditure reduction program in last year's budget, which seeks to cut expenditure to strengthen fiscal discipline. The objective is to trim recurrent expenditure by 1% in 2022-23, including welfare spending. Mr. President, in response to an oral question at the Council meeting of the 19th of January this year, I already gave a detailed reply and I have nothing to add here. However, if members have carefully gone through the allocation to Social Welfare Department for welfare services in the Appropriation Bill 2022-23, there is an actual increase of 5.5% in the 2022-23 budget as compared to the revised estimates in 21-22. I urge members to support the bill. I also urge members to support future funding applications for welfare facilities, and RCGs constitutes a very important part, and it takes $10 billion to provide 10,000 RCG places. I so submit.
Secretary for Development. President, I thank members for offering valuable and useful comments on housing and land supply. The government will consider such views and continue to adopt a multi-pronged land creation strategy. The main sources of supply in the future would come from the promotion of new development area projects and reclamation and land rezoning. For example, the Tung Chung East Extension area with the 130-hectare land reclamation started at the end of 2017. It has been progressing satisfactorily, and we expect the first population intake to take place in 2024. We are also pursuing the developments at the northern Metropolis at full steam. Apart from the two development areas of Fanling North, Kutong North, and Hong Shui Kiu, Hachun, which have entered the construction phase, funding for the first batch of works under Yuen Long South Development will be submitted to the Public Works Subcommittee on the 11th for consideration, and if the funding is approved, we can commence the works by the third quarter this year. As for further land development proposals at the northern Metropolis, the planning work is well underway. We adjusted the original scopes of two planning studies in order to cover the Santin Technopole and the Lorwu Menkamto Comprehensive Development Node. When planning the land uses for these areas, we would maximize their geographical advantage and to make use of the opportunities brought about by Shenzhen and the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area to promote the industries. Later this year, the government will commence planning studies on the expansion of the Hongshui-Kiu Hatri New Development Area to the area around Laofaoshan, Jinpeishui, and Paknai, and to expand the Kutong North NDA to Macho Long. As for the development of the Kaoyichao Artificial Islands, which involve reclamation of 1,000 hectares of land, relevant studies started in the middle of 2021, and in the fourth quarter this year, we will offer preliminary proposals on the 4 key areas of reclamation extent, transport infrastructure and alignment, primary land uses and financing plans, and take in views from the public. Our original proposal was to commence the first phase of reclamation projects by 2027 for the first population intake by 2034. Through streamlining development-related statutory and administrative procedures, we are trying to bring the timetable forward so that the first phase of reclamation can take place by 2026 for the first intake of population by 2033. We also plan to apply for funding from LegCo within the year to commence planning and engineering studies at for Longkutan reclamation and Tuen Mun West development. If all goes according to plan, the reclamation works can begin by 2027 or earlier. To make use of valuable land resources, we are currently reviewing sites of different uses. The government has started a new round of review for greenbelt sites to examine about 300 hectares of sites shown as greenbelt, and we would assess their potential for development into housing or other land uses. We expect preliminary results to be available this year, after which technical studies will begin. Like I said, the government is pursuing the streamlining of development control. Land development involves different aspects such as urban planning, land administration, and construction works. In the last few years, the government has rolled out a series of streamlining measures in these areas to rationalize and simplify the administrative procedures involved. Since 2019, 11 initiatives to streamline the development procedures have been implemented. In order to streamline development procedures in a more thorough and complete manner, we have started reviewing the statutory procedures to these work. We have looked at the Town Planning Ordinance, Lands Resumption Ordinance, Foreshore and Seabed Reclamation Ordinance, etc. And in March this year, we briefed the LegCo panel on development on the preliminary amendment proposals. By shortening statutory time limits, minimizing repetitive procedures of a similar nature, providing an express mandate to proceed with procedures in parallel, and rationalizing obsolete arrangements, we are looking to make use of public resources more effectively to speed up the statutory procedures of urban planning application, land resumption, gazette of works, etc., to provide land as soon as possible. I'd like to thank members for their support at the panel on development, and they also offered valuable views for the government. We will consider all views and look to table an amendment bill to LegCo within the year to address the expectations of our society on land and housing supply. I urge members to support the Appropriation Bill 2022.
Secretary for Transport and Housing. President. First of all, I'm grateful to all members who have expressed their views during the second reading debate on the Appropriation Bill. I'd like to make a response on areas of transport and housing. The government adopts the infrastructure-led and capacity-building approach in planning transport infrastructure projects to release the development potential along the alignment of the new infrastructure to meet transport needs arising from population growth, employment, and economic activities. Railway is the backbone of the public transport system. I made the announcement yesterday that the East Rail will be commissioned on the 15th of this month for the Cross Harbour section. Passengers can travel between the NT Northeast and Hong Kong Island direct without any interchanges. Other than the planned rail projects, we have the Task Force for Hong Kong-Shenzhen Cooperation on Cross-Boundary Railway Infrastructure to take forward the 3 cross-boundary rail projects envisaged in the Northern Metropolis. On road infrastructure, the construction, the plan will be consulted this year. And we also have the public transport strategy to map out the strategy. In terms of public transport, we're grateful to members for being positive about the public transport fare subsidy scheme. There are a large number of beneficiaries, and the annual budget for this is $3 billion. When the government considers the long-term arrangement, we will cautiously balance various factors to make sure public dollar is well spent. The government and MTRC will, by the second half of this year, review the fare adjustment mechanism. We will listen to public views to come up with a pragmatic model. To maximize the efficiency of road space, we are promoting smart mobility and harness technology for transport management. And the Transport Department is studying the idea of digital licensing to improve the services provided by the licensing offices. We will be consulting electrical this month. Turning now to aviation, the 14th Five-Year Plan and outline development plan of the GBA confirms Hong Kong's position as an international aviation hub. Despite the pandemic, the Hong Kong International Airport remained the busiest airport in the world for cargo handling. The third runway system is coming on stream this year. The government will be continuing with the construction of the airport city, will strengthen the passenger and cargo connectivity with the GBA cities, and also promote the sea-air cargo transshipment between Hong Kong and Dongguan. In the area of sea transport, the government will continue to develop and cement our position as high value-added maritime services and transshipment hub for the region. I'm grateful to members for their support for the legislative proposal to provide tax concessions for shipping commercial principles. We will be introducing a bill to the Council to attract the enterprises that establish their business presence in Hong Kong. In terms of public housing, many members expressed concerns about the waiting time for PRH. We believe that identifying sites for housing production is the fundamental answer to the housing issues. And therefore, the government has been sparing no efforts. We have seen increasing number of public housing production. For the 5 years between 17-18 and 21-22, the public housing production will reach 96,500, up by 30,000 compared with the preceding 5 years. The government has identified 350 hectares to build 330,000 public housing units in the coming 10 years, enough to meet the target of 301,000. For private housing, for the 5 years from 2022, the annual production will reach 19,000, up by 40% compared with the previous 5 years. And the first-hand private residential units will reach 99,000. In order to deal with the massive production volume, the Housing Authority will, in the process of creating land resources, concurrently commence some of the advanced work so that the building work can start as soon as the sites become available. The HA will also resort to MIC mode of production. The HA will also identify the buildings that are suited for adoption of MIC, and the HA will adopt a design and build model. The contractor will be responsible for the design and construction, and we take full advantage of the resources and expertise of this private sector to further compress the building process. We have adjusted the pricing policy of the HOS to delink it from the private market, and Green Farm subsidized homeownership scheme is also priced on the basis of HOS. We have rolled out a whole series of measures to help people get on the housing ladder, like the Starter Home project for Hong Kong residents. We've regularized the GHS and the HOS SMS. We speed up the sale of remaining units under the TPS. And we have rolled out 13,600 subsidized sale units, which is the highest since the resumption of sale in 2014. Some members expressed concerns about the subdivided units, and in fact, this is one of the measures in the long-term housing strategy. When the demand for public housing is met, STU issue will be improved. Until that happens, the government has launched 3 groundbreaking initiatives, including the transitional housing, the STU tenancy control, and the pilot cash allowance scheme to improve the quality of life for those who are in inadequate housing. The STU tenancy control has been implemented on the 22nd of January, and this will provide 4 years of tenancy protection and limit the magnitude of rental increase upon renewal, and to stop overcharging of utilities fees. We understand that some of the tenancy agreement is in the form of verbal agreement. If the verbal tenancy complies with the regulated tenancies, like they commence after the 22nd of January, it is residential in nature. They are in subsidized or subdivided unit. The tenant being a natural person, then the virtual tenancy will be subject to regulation and be protected. The Rating Evaluation Department has set up a task force to be responsible for enforcement work. Apart from acting on complaints, the RVD will proactively understand the tenancy situation, and they'll be visiting these STU tenants to understand whether the landlords are in breach of the new regulation. There will be publicity and education to equip the tenants with the relevant knowledge. There are 6 regional teams that have been set up to heighten public awareness of the new system and to handle inquiries. As to transitional housing, it is spearheaded by the THB. We have identified enough land to provide 19,000 transitional housing units. We will endeavor to do everything we possibly can to provide adequate housing for the needy. The administration is proposing to increase the subsidy level for transitional housing from $8.3 billion to $11.6 billion. The new $3.3 billion commitment has been submitted as part of the Appropriation Bill 2022. President, with these words, I urge members to support the Appropriation Bill 2022.
財政司司長。
And now call upon the Financial Secretary to reply. President, members, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank members for offering valuable views last week at the LegCo meeting on the 2022 to 23 budget. Just now, a number of my colleagues have offered replies to some of the policy areas, and now I'd like to review on the latest situation of the global and local economy. Next month, I will be attending a meeting at the LegCo panel on financial affairs to brief members on the economic situation and outlook, so I will only speak briefly on that today. The global economy has seen a consistent revival over the past year, but the Omicron variant appeared at the latter end of last year, and together with the impacts of the supply bottleneck and increased inflation, the recovery pace of main economies have been subject to constraints. In recent months, the global pandemic has eased, but geopolitical tensions remain volatile, which push up the prices of energy and commodity products, and this created downward pressure for the global economy and led to more uncertainties in the tightening of fiscal policies by the main central banks. The IMF lowered the global economic forecast by 0.8% to 3.6% in April this year. Among the main economies, the mainland economy recorded a 4.8% growth year-on-year in the first quarter of this year. However, there was a rebound in COVID since March in some areas of the mainland, which created a strain on the economy. It is expected that the mainland will continue to reinforce its policies to stabilize the economy, and the GDP growth of our nation is expected to be 5.5% this year. In terms of the local situation, the data announced yesterday show that the first quarter was affected by the fifth wave of the pandemic, and the Hong Kong economy shrink by 4% year-on-year, which was the first decline after 4 straight quarters of growth. The pandemic worsened in the first quarter this year, and the number of people who went out took a dive, and spending sentiments were weak, and the pandemic also seriously affected the local business sentiments. Investment expenditure fell 8.3% year-on-year in real terms in the first quarter on external trade due to weakening of external supply and bottlenecks in the supply and logistics, and coupled with the high base effects in the first quarter of the year, export of goods in Hong Kong fell 4.5% year-on-year in real terms. As for the labor market, we were still under tremendous strain in the first quarter, and the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate climbed to the latest 5%. And as the pandemic started to stabilize from April and the social distancing measures were gradually relaxed, local demand saw an improvement. And however, our economy is still affected by external factors such as the global pandemic, tightening geopolitical situation, high inflation, the monetary policies of main central banks, as well as Sino-US relations. And we are now reviewing the latest GDP forecast and will announce the latest figure in May. Now, I'd like to talk about the context in drafting this budget and some of our key initiatives. When I drafted this bill in this budget at the end of February, Hong Kong was facing the fifth wave of the pandemic, and the markets were depressed. Some parts of our economy faced seismic shocks, and under this background, I rolled out strong countercyclical measures in the budget in order to create a leverage effect by spending public money and to support enterprises and people's livelihood. And as such, there were 4 main areas to the budget. Controlling the pandemic is key to economic recovery. The budget allocated more than 60 billion of resources to fight the epidemic, including efforts in testing, procurement of vaccines and RAT kits and relevant services, enhancing environmental hygiene, etc. Number 2, alleviating people's livelihood and supporting enterprises. The budget offered a number of one-off relief measures such as tax and rates concessions, subsidy in electricity tariffs, extra social security payments, lowering of threshold under the public transport subsidy scheme, extending the application period for the 100% personal loan guarantee scheme, etc., as well as consumption vouchers. In terms of supporting enterprises, the budget seeks to alleviate the burden faced by companies, and initiatives include profits tax and rates concessions, waiver of business registration fees, extending the waivers or concessions of government fees and charges. And in order to ease the cash flow situation of enterprises, we extended the application period for all loan guarantee products under the SME financing guarantee scheme, raising the maximum loan amount and extending the repayment period under the 100% personal loan guarantee scheme, and again extending the repayment period for the pre-approved principal payment holiday scheme. And to further support enterprises who are in deep plight, the budget offered a rental enforcement moratorium. Once again, I'd like to thank members for passing the bill last Thursday. The legislation came into effect on May the 1st, and the protection period started on the same day and would last on July the 31st this year. I believe the legislation can offer temporary protection for commercial tenants who ran into difficulties so that they would not have to close down, and this also created room for landlords and tenants to renegotiate the rental arrangement under this difficult time. So long as the pandemic comes under control and that we can continue to maintain dynamic zero infections, we expect consumption and investment to pick up steam again, and they would create favorable conditions to reopening of borders with the mainland. So long as risks are prudently managed, we can gradually resume international travel as well. The first round of the consumption voucher scheme, the $5,000 coupons were dispersed to eligible citizens already in early April, and the consumption vouchers injected some $30 billion into our market to support the markets, and this also created hope for enterprises and tenants. The public and tenants rated positively to the scheme, and with the gradual easing of the pandemic, consumption has seen an improvement. We are now preparing for the second phase of the scheme, and registration will begin in the middle of this year, and we expect to disperse the remaining $5,000 worth of vouchers over the summer. And we are working on medium and long-term planning in order to make good use of our resources without losing sight to our imminent challenges. We will continue to pursue work on the medium to long term, grasp our opportunities, and invest for the future. In order to speed up our transformation into a digital economy, the budget proposed the setting up of a digital economy development committee in order to establish a strategic blueprint to speed up the development of a digital economy in Hong Kong, including promoting the digital transformation of industries, developing digital services, digital management, and the construction of soft infrastructure. And that way we can empower enterprises and create new energy for our economy while providing quality digital experiences for the public. The budget also proposed investment for Hong Kong's future, including the increase of the allocation on the Hong Kong growth portfolio under the Future Fund to $10 billion, of which $5 billion would be used to set up a strategic tech fund to nurture mature and tech enterprises of potential so that they can contribute to Hong Kong's economy and employment. Another $5 billion would be used to set up a GBA investment fund to create new opportunities for the region while benefiting Hong Kong. The budget also earmarked $10 billion to further promote health tech development in Hong Kong and to reinforce the capacity and capabilities of different organizations. The goal is to promote collaboration in R&D and the development of relevant industries, and to create industry clusters so that Hong Kong can become an important hub for health tech. At the Northern Metropolis, sufficient sites for I&T would be earmarked, and I would reserve $100 billion under the accumulated revenue of the Future Fund to speed up the development of land, housing, and transport infrastructure in the Northern Metropolis. The budget also seeks to reinforce our financial services as well as maritime and aviation and trade, and this would better exercise our roles under the National 14th Five-Year Plan. Apart from these measures, the budget proposes additional resources to build a green city, and by enhancing leisure and recreational facilities and enhance care and community services, we can create quality living and a harmonious society. Now I'd like to talk about public finance. President, members, with years of development and the efforts of the public, when the current term government took over, the fiscal reserves were some $950 billion. The healthy reserves allowed us to flexibly address the needs of our community and improve our services while allocating extra resources to tackle different crises. Even though we once saw an annual deficit of some $200 billion within our term, at the end of the current term of the government, the fiscal reserves will remain at some $950 billion, and based on the interim forecast in the next 5 years, the level will return to above $1 trillion or equivalent to 16 months of government expenditure. And due to the expenses incurred on fighting the epidemic and alleviation measures, I expect a deficit in the government's operating account in 2022 to 23, but we are expected to break even in the years from 2023 to 24. Hong Kong is an open-ended economy, and government revenue is easily affected by economic situation, and our tax base is relatively narrow. To maintain healthy public finances, we must be prudent while maintaining the energy of our economy, while creating new growth drivers to boost revenue. On the medium term, with economic cooperation or with the international tax reform proposal of OECD, Hong Kong can enjoy extra profits tax revenue with the implementation of the global minimum tax rate. And in the budget, I propose a phased reform of the rates regime, including a progressive system for residential properties, and to realize the principle of the capable paying more. On the long run, with population aging, the government will continue to explore additional sources of revenue. President, members, this is the final budget of the current term government. In the past few years, when preparing for budgets, I had asked myself the question, that is, what does Hong Kong need the most, and what do people expect of the government, and what should our ideal home look like? As a unique international city under one country, two systems, how should Hong Kong position ourselves and develop ourselves going forward? I realize that there's only so much a budget can achieve. But I would strive to use our wealth to serve people in need and to relieve the burden on the middle class while building a rosy future for Hong Kong and making appropriate investments. The key is to rationalize different priorities and distributing resources in a fair manner while serving the majority of the public, we must not forget the needs of the minority as well. In 2018 and the first half of 2019, our economy was growing, unemployment fell to 2.8%, so we were in a very healthy position. The per capita GDP was about 46,000 US dollars. In my exchanges with LegCo members, some told me that despite the per capita GDP of 46,000 US dollars, many people in the society were still living under hardship, even though our unemployment rate fell to 2.8%. We must remember that some people who had a job were still really unhappy because they were still under tremendous pressure. So economic development is not just about GDP growth or per capita income. Perhaps we would still compare favorably in these indicators, but we should really consider how our people would benefit and what their lives look like. And that is why this budget was centered around the people. And in our discussions, some LegCo members told me that Hong Kong is an international financial center, and it has developed well in that regard. But the question was, how would people actually benefit? Many people are making a lot of money, but prices are also high. So at the end, could people really benefit? So that was when we started to change our mindset in compiling the coming budgets. In the last few years, we put in a lot of efforts in developing financial services. This is one of our areas of strength, and we were also looking to boost revenue by developing financial services. And in terms of the listing of INT companies with a weighted voting rights structure and the listing regime for special purpose acquisition companies and the development of the bond markets, these were significant to Hong Kong and our nation. And we also reinforce our efforts in issuing I-bond, silver bond, the retail green bond, etc. I had some discussions with NGOs. As you know, we have a number of major statutory bodies in Hong Kong who issue bonds, and I encourage them to issue retail bonds, but the response was not very positive because the interest rates offered would be higher compared with institutional investors, and the issuance of bonds could also attract criticism from the public, given the credit ratings of Hong Kong. It wouldn't be difficult to issue bonds worth billions of dollars. So why do we have to take the trouble to issue retail bonds? And in response, I told them that the move is to benefit the public, and that would help educate the public on what we are doing. And if they have a part to play, they would better understand our work or the work of the government. That is why we have been trying to promote retail bonds. Our economy was developing well. We had a high per capita income, but there are still people in our society living in hardship. In the 2018 budget, I did learn a lesson. At that time, we had a fiscal surplus of some $100 billion, and many people called for the government to share the surplus with the public, which was right. So that year, we offered 3 months of CSSA payments, and for PLH tenants, they enjoy a 2-month waiver. We offered a tax or a salary tax rebate of $30,000 instead of $20,000. At the end, we still attracted heavy criticisms, and the reason was that there was a lack of balance. At that time, many legislators called for the government to offer cash handouts, and that is why we saw the introduction of the caring and sharing scheme, and eligible persons would receive $4,000. And again, that scheme attracted a lot of criticisms. And they said our approach should be more targeted. People who already enjoyed a tax rebate of $30,000 to $40,000, they enjoyed rates rebates, and CSSA recipients received 3 months of payments already. So these people should no longer receive extra benefits. So only those who enjoyed less than $4,000 in concessions or rebates would be eligible for that payment. And that is why we proceeded with the move, and we ran into hiccups in terms of its administration. So a lesson we learned from that episode was that we must strike a balance between administration and benefit. At the end, notwithstanding the PLH tenants, those who received rates rebate of at least $4,000, 3 million people remain eligible. Some of them might be housewives, some might be university students. Even after excluding these people, there was still a sizable population. Today, we have a high per capita GDP in Hong Kong, but there remains a huge gap in people's income. So in subsequent budgets, Well, that was one reason we chose to introduce consumption vouchers. Through these vouchers, we hoped to benefit everyone. And we hope that this can relieve people's livelihood under the difficult circumstances. When it comes to economic development, how do we actually gauge our efforts? In recent years, we invested heavily on I&T. We invested more than $100 billion, both in spent and committed funds. I&T is a global trend, and it is also a key area of competition. It can help transform traditional businesses and industries as well. Through I&T development, we hope to create quality jobs for different people, including our youth, so that they can enjoy more options. In the last few years, in terms of sport and culture, we invested extra resources as well. And people have different aspirations, and I hope our investments can help people explore and develop their interests. Our experience over the past few years showed us that there were different solutions to the same problem, and very often it is difficult to forge a consensus. But so long as we do a proper job in explaining our work while seeking the support of the majority, we should gather greater support from different parties, and at the end, we or our work might be recognized. And that was our mentality in introducing the consumption vouchers last year. President, I just shared some of our experience the past few years, and the public is always our priority. We are looking to meet their needs, and we would feel the pulse of the market while planning for the future. Hong Kong was subject to black-clad violence, and subsequently we were hit by the global pandemic in the next 2 years. However, in the recent decades, we saw that despite the difficulties, with the support of our nation, Hong Kong people has remained resilient and flexible, and I'm confident that we would see a brighter future as our nation continues to develop, and the implementation of one country, two systems has returned to the right track in Hong Kong. Under the improved electoral system and the implementation of the Patriots Administering Hong Kong principle, we will see prosperity, and our future is certainly very bright. I call upon members to pass the Appropriation Bill 2022 so that the various budget measures could be implemented soon, and we will see a full recovery to our economy to benefit the public. President, members, and so I speak. Thank you.
I now put a question to you that the Appropriation Bill 2022 be read the second time. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against? I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Appropriation Bill 2022. This council now becomes committee of the whole council.